You were created to know and enjoy God. You were called to be in community so that you can become all that God desires you to be. God designed you with a purpose so you can be the difference in this world, and we exist to help you on that journey. Graceway.
Hey, welcome to Graceway Online. My name is Craig, and I'm so excited that you're here. Be sure to connect with us by dropping a comment below, putting in praise hands, or by letting us know where you're from. We have an incredible experience planned for you today. Let's join in.
All right, man, it's good to see you guys. I see you really every Sunday, but to see you from this perspective, it's a little different, right? Have you all enjoyed this series on 1 John? Man, I have enjoyed it. I've cried, I've laughed, I've said, ouch. It has been absolutely fabulous. And so when Pastor Tim said, hey, would you mind wrapping this up and putting the bow on it? I was like, what? You want me to finish this series? Man, I was wanting to come and listen to you finish this series. But he said, no, I can't do that. I want you to do it. And I'm like, well, sure, great. Because chapter 5 of 1 John has long been a favorite of mine. So I'm thinking, yeah, this is a piece of cake. This is great. And this whole study, y'all, that we're going to do this morning is all about belonging. Knowing we belong. Okay, so I started studying that a few weeks ago. I'm reading through 1 John chapter 5. I'm praying like, God, what would you have me to share? And then some strange things began to happen. God began to show me this study wasn't for you, it was for me. And I began to see some things here. I don't know how many times I've taught through 1 John chapter 5, but I began to see some things that opened up inside of me some rooms where the door had been shut for a long time. Decades. You ever had any rooms inside of you with locked doors? I thought I had opened all of those. But I want to share with you this morning some things that God has been doing in me the last couple of weeks. And there's several reasons why I want to do that, because God gave me some amazing insight into me, and I really believe some amazing insight into some of you. Because I think this is a common problem that we're dealing with. And there's a second reason I'm really excited about this. And over the years, when I was the lead pastor here, I've tried to be as transparent as I possibly could, talk to you about our struggles with PTSD and all that type of stuff. But I want to talk to you this morning about a struggle that I don't think I've ever talked publicly about. And one of the reasons for that is I don't think I have ever been able to define that struggle until the last couple of weeks. And there's a third reason I want to share this with you this morning, and this is kind of encourage some of you in my age group. I just turned 73, okay? And yeah, man. In the prime of life, baby. A lot of good years left. But here's the deal, man. The day that I stop learning and changing is the day that I say, I'm done here. You're never too old to change, to learn, to open the doors to those rooms that are shut, right? You know, those of you who've been through a 12-step program, I just admire you, and I can only imagine the guts that it takes that first time to stand in front of a group of people and say, hey, my name is Jeff, and I'm an alcoholic. Now, I don't have that problem. I got other problems, okay? And probably not nearly as bad as that problem, but I'm standing here before you today to say, my name is Jeff, and all my life I have struggled to belong. I've struggled to know that I belong. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. I've told bits and pieces of my story for years and all of that, but I was for 10 years, the only child of a mom who was an only child and a dad who was an only child. Okay, you do the math. That means no aunts, no uncles, no cousins. And I had a brother, then my only sibling, who was born when I was 10. So that saying, us four, no more, we kind of invented that. That was our family. That was it. And can I tell you that I always envied the kids who came from big families? And it seemed like they had all these family activities and family reunions, and they were always doing this and doing that and all of that. And we never had that. Christmas Day, us four, no more. And then my grandmother that we moved in with when I was in grade school, and that was it. And I would be envious. I could not understand what it must be like to come from a family that was bigger and had that family tradition and all. And to make matters worse, I came from a family of artists. My dad was an artist. My grandmother was an artist. And I'm talking about people that painted for a hobby. They both legitimately had fine arts degrees from wonderful institutions. My grandmother went to the Kansas City Art Institute right here. And artists can be a little... Are you getting the picture? You getting the idea? You feeling my pain a little bit, okay? Wonderful people. But I knew that I was different. I knew that I was weird, so I read a lot. Now, I know you read a lot too. No, I mean I really read a lot. If I'd get interested in archaeology, I'd go down to the small public library in our town. I would read every book on archaeology. Then I would read every book on electronics. Then I would read every book on astronomy, whatever. That was my life. And because of that, I had very few friends. I didn't hang out with people. I was just, any other weirdos here this morning? Okay, some of you are identifying, all right? And you know what that means. And so I struggle, like, who in the world am I? And who are my people? Where do I belong? Well, the artistic genes, as far as painting was concerned, ran out with my dad. I didn't ever have any interest or talent for painting, but those artistic genes came out in me in terms of music. Now, this was the 60s, okay? This was the day, the highlight of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And so you're probably thinking, I learned how to play guitar and formed a band. Well, I did learn how to play guitar a little bit, but no, I did not form a band. And what happened? I ended up playing French horn in the orchestra. I mean, is this not the perfect storm for somebody who's already an introvert? And I'm like, this is really strange. And I thought, what in the world is going on? So then I went to college, met my lovely wife, Cheryl. We got married soon thereafter. And when we were still in our early to mid-20s, we felt like God would have us move to Central America, and so we did. We became immigrants. Any immigrants here? We got a bunch, don't we? You know what that's like. And you know the struggle to feel like you belong somewhere. You've left everything that you thought you belonged to, and now you're trying to figure things out. We immigrated 3 times to 3 different countries in our 20s. Going through the process of trying to get residencies and all the stuff, trying to figure out what the heck's going on, all the things that you do when you're an immigrant. We went through that 3 times in our 20s as we were struggling to belong. I got really good at blending in. And I determined that I was going to blend in no matter what. Spanish was my 4th language. I got really good at it. I could blend in. I still can. And in fact, it's really kind of weird because as the son of an only child and an only child, my only mentors were Latin American men. And so what that meant is when we immigrated to Central America, as young people, my worldview was formed in Latin America. I have white skin. I'm brown on the inside. Okay, it's just the way that things worked out. And so again, struggling to blend in, and I got really, really good at it. Over my life, I've worked in some 80 countries on 6 continents. I've been in weird places. I've been in underground churches in Ethiopia when it was a communist country. I've been able to blend into countries like Albania and Romania right after communism ended. Some of the work that I'm most proud of, I did a lot of work in South Africa for a number of years. I would be the only white dude in the city of Soweto, the only white dude among 2 million black people. And I learned how to blend in. In fact, there's a lovely lady here this morning who gave me the title, the cultural chameleon, that I wear with honor. But can I tell you what I've learned over many years? Blending in is not the same thing as belonging. And so even though I got really good on the outside, it was really, really hard to feel like I belonged anywhere. 1984, y'all called us back to be lead pastor. Love this church, absolutely love this church. It's where Cheryl and I moved not long after we got married. Spent 2 or 3 years here working and serving here before we immigrated to Latin America. This last move was really for us because, again, remember, we've been a decade immigrating to 3 other countries, and so when y'all called us back, really, we were immigrating a 4th time. And can I tell you, that was the hardest immigration of all. Our problem was not getting residency papers. We had a U.S. passport. The problem was we moved back brown on the inside. And it was, I could get up here, preach on Sunday morning, but on the inside, I'm like, where am I? Because I felt like I didn't belong in my own birth country. And can I say that over the many, many years, even though this church is the center of my universe, in this culture and in this country, I still feel awkward. Our girls did not grow up here. This was not coming home for them. I will never forget, we had moved back as our oldest daughter was just getting ready to turn 13. And as a little 12 to 13-year-old in Latin America, she had already been dreaming of her quinceañera for a long time. Now, I can use that word because we have several hundred Latinos in our church, and by now everybody knows what that is. When we first arrived here, nobody had a clue what that was all about. And there was no way to help her in that. And I'll never forget the first day she went to school. Our girls had grown up in literally a one-room schoolhouse, and they called their teacher Aunt Hazel, K through 12, like 15 kids. I'll never forget the first day we watched her get on a bus and go to middle school with 1,300 students, changing classes every hour. And even though she could speak English, she didn't understand English. You know what I'm talking about? She didn't know slang. She didn't know the culture. She didn't know anything. Came home the first day. She wanted to know what it meant. She was warned what would happen if she was tardy. She thought it was a disease. Y'all, those are the things, and some of you who have immigrated, you're relating to that because you've been through those same things. And you understand how hard that is. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm saying all of this because what I want to do is to offer to you today empathy. And to say, I get it. I know how hard it is to know that you belong. And I think that in one moment or another, just about everybody in here has been through that. You've moved to a new city. You've moved to a new school. You've taken the first day at a new job or know what it's like to try to fit in sometimes to your own family. Some of you today walked in here, maybe somebody invited you and you're wondering, like, do I really belong here? We all struggle with that, right? Knowing that we belong is, I think, is one of the most common and one of the most powerful forces in the human being. And what happens is usually we go to one extreme or another. Either we become a wet puppy dog, like, want to be friends with me, want to be friends with me? Or we move to the island and start voting everybody else off. And that's kind of our default modes. So I want to share with you this morning what God taught me, 3 ways here in 1 John chapter 5 to know that you belong. And as Pastor Tim has been talking about, knowing in this context is a word that implies not just intellectual knowledge, it implies comprehension, understanding Know that you belong. And then I want to show you two amazing, powerful benefits that come from that. So before we go to 1 John chapter 5, you can dial it in right now, but I want to tell you just a little bit about John as we get started by way of review. And I love the way that Pastor Tim has been approaching this whole study of 1 John, because more than just showing us words on a page, in every single study, he's tried to get us inside the life of John and to see John as a real live human being. And I love that. And maybe you've noticed, maybe you haven't, but all of the references that he makes reference to outside of the text itself, for the most part, have come from John's other writings. The Gospel of John, 2nd, 3rd John, Book of Revelation. And he has tried to get us inside the mind of this man, a real human with a story just like you and just like me. And now it's been many years since the resurrection of Jesus Christ. John, who was the youngest apostle, is now an older man. He's probably about my age if we understand the chronology of these times. And he is the pastor of the church in Ephesus. And in all probability, he's the one that founded these other of the 7 churches of Asia Minor, or Southwest Turkey as they would be today, that you see mentioned in Revelation chapters 1 to 3. But yet, after all this time, John is concerned because there is division, there is heresy that is growing in these churches, and he has to deal with it. And from day one of this study, Tim has said, look, this is amazing what has happened here, because rather than just coming out and attacking and naming names and fighting and all that type of stuff, John says, hey, y'all, I'm the guy that walked with him, remember? I saw him with my eyes. I heard his voice. I put my head on his chest. I touched him, he touched me. And I want to talk to you about what it means to really have a relationship with him and with God and with each other. And so what John did is he cut right to the chase, and he gave us, in those opening words of 1 John, those first couple of chapters, he gave us, in essence, a confession of faith. This is what we believe. And forget about all the minor stuff. Forget about how you do baptism, how you do the Lord's Supper. Not to say those things are not important, but listen to me. This is what is important, that you know that Jesus is the Christ. To know that he is the one that died in our place and that we can have fellowship with God. So he started with what we have in common. And he's worked all the way through this little letter to do that. And it's just been so cool. He doesn't want to argue. He doesn't want to fight. He's just saying, look, this is what we all believe in common. So if we believe these things in common, then let's focus on loving God and loving each other. Hard to do in our atmosphere today, isn't it? But you know, the other side of that, I was thinking about that the other day. I don't know about you, I've had to sometimes just turn off the news and just turn off social media and all this type of stuff, hearing all the screaming and crying and complaining and name calling and all this type of stuff. I'm like, oh, dear God. But then the other day I was thinking, you know, what a wonderful time to be a Christian. Because if you just love God and other people, you're going to stand out like a beacon of light in the darkness. It's a wonderful time to be a follower of Jesus Christ. So, another thing I want you to know, John was not a Westerner. Pastor Tim dropped a bombshell on us a couple of weeks ago when he said, believe it or not, the Bible was not written in New York City. It was written in Asia by Asians. And John is not a Westerner, y'all. He is an Asian. And so because of that, he doesn't think in a linear, logical, sequencing type way. He's not the guy that divides his M&Ms by colors, okay? That's not John. He doesn't do that. He comes at things in a different way. He circles in the back door. And as such, he uses a technique that was very common in Asia in his day. He's not like the Greeks and the Romans who would have written something. Give you an example. Dr. Luke begins his gospel. Okay, Theophilus, here's the deal. I'm going to lay out for you in order all these wonderful things that Jesus did so that you can have certainty that they're true. John doesn't do that. John begins his gospel in a poetic way. He ties it to creation itself. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then he takes 7 events, 7 miracles from Jesus' life, and he ties them together in this amazing story. And he doesn't tell us why until the very end. And in John chapter 20 and verse 30, he says, "Now, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written, so that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed One." Isn't that amazing? That's why John's gospel is so different than the other 3. Not a contradiction, just different altogether. He doesn't try to write everything down. He says, look, I couldn't write down all that Jesus did if I had all the pen and paper in the world. I couldn't do that. But I chose these so that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life. So John is writing to people who didn't believe so that they might believe. Now, all this journey we've been on with Pastor Tim and John these last several weeks, we come to chapter 5. And true to form, in chapter 5, in the very middle of the chapter, John's going to tell us why he wrote this letter. And this is what this is all about. It's verse 13. And that's where we're going to start this morning. 1 John chapter 5, verse 13. "I write these things to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, that you may know that you have eternal life." Isn't that amazing? So simple, so profound, so powerful. His gospel is written so that those who don't believe might believe and have life. And his first epistle is written to those who believe, that you might not have doubt, that you might not be destroyed by feelings of not belonging, but that you might know that you have eternal life and that you belong to God's family. That's what it's all about. Love this guy, John. So the key thought that we're dealing with here is this: knowing we belong is based on the fact that God accepts us based on the work of Jesus Christ, not what we have done, not our performance, and that's the key to loving freely and living confidently. That's what it's about. So all this stuff that John's been talking about, you want to know how to do this? You want to know how to love God and love others? You want to know? You've got to know that you belong. To know it. Not just have faith. Our age is the age of having faith in faith. We just got to have faith. What does that mean? Just have faith, brother. Just have faith. Just have faith, sister. Faith in what? True faith has an object of faith. A true object, a fact. Not faith in faith, but faith in Jesus Christ. Knowing. People gain confidence by knowing that they're not alone. A few weeks ago, I watched an amazing young man have a transformation in life and some of the things he'd been struggling with, and he had an opportunity to find his tribe. And he found out that he was not the only person that wrestled with these things. Changed his life. Confidence of knowing that we're not in this alone and that we belong, that we have a tribe. So now we're in the middle of 1 John chapter 5. Let's work our way back in both directions, okay? So we look at 1 John chapter 5, and here John is going to tell us 3 ways that we can know that we belong. Number 1, we can know that we are belonging because we are born into God's family, born into His family. It's kind of hard to be unborn. You're born into God's family. This is what he says here in verse 1. Everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ has been born of God, and everyone who loves the Father loves whoever has been born of Him. Wow. There's that born again thing. Now, let me throw you just a word of caution, because this whole phrase born again has become so trite, so commonplace, so misused, so overused that when people hear that, people who don't know Jesus kind of roll their eyes like, okay, here we go again. You're the dude with the cardboard sign at the football game, right? No, that's not what we're talking about here. Yes, John is the guy who gave us that. John is a guy in his gospel in John chapter 3 told us a story that nobody else told about Nicodemus and Jesus telling him, Nicodemus, you got to be born again. And John is a guy who now he's bringing that up again, but he's not trying to give us a catchphrase. He's just trying to say simply that this is so sure that when you put your faith in Jesus, you enter into a spiritual dimension. It's like a birth. Now, this was hard for me again. Let me tell you why. Okay? My family was Scottish. Now, being Scottish and Presbyterian is kind of like being Italian and Roman Catholic, okay? So I grew up in the Presbyterian church. It was a great church, and I had a lot of good memories there, but it wasn't until I got to college that I really was confronted with how this affected me personally. And you've heard the story, some of you, that I was reading Billy Graham's book, Peace with God, my college dorm room, Wichita State University. And over a period of time, reading that book, that's where faith became real to me. But nobody told me that I had a born-again experience. Nobody asked me to raise my hand. Nobody asked me to pray that prayer. Jesus found me by myself in a dorm room. And I started going to a Baptist church near the university. Now, okay, put this into focus here. Now, praise God, because at that Baptist church, I met my lovely wife. Okay, that's worth the price of admission right there. But in that Baptist church, everybody was talking about being born again, born again, born again. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. That crazy Presbyterian church, they never told me about this. Well, as I look back decades later, I realized, yeah, they did. They just did it in a different way. They believed in new birth just like anybody else. They just came about a little way. They took me through a confirmation class when I was 12 years old, and they tried to help me understand. I wasn't ready, okay? Sometimes people are just not ready. It's not the fault of the church. It's not the fault of anybody. It's just sometimes people, it's not their time. My time came along, so I started hearing about all this born-again stuff, and I'd hear the testimonies at church. I can remember I was sitting there in that chair. It was one 13th of February in 19 such and such, and I began to cry because the pastor preached this. And I'm like, wait a minute. People say, well, when are you born again? I'm like, just a second, let me check. And I didn't have a date. So, okay, follow my story. I've just come to faith. And I still don't know that I belong. I'm a Presbyterian kid in the midst of a bunch of Baptists who are talking about being born again, and I'm confused. Praise God, he sent an old missionary to come through our church one time, and I was tasked to take him back to the hotel. I was kind of unloading on him and telling him about my struggle. And he said, son, he says, you know something? I don't remember much about when I was born physically. I just know what my mom told me. But I do know this, I'm born. I'm like, oh, really? Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. You can't remember the day or the time or the circumstances as long as you know that you were born. And you know what God did to me? This is so cool. Some of you heard my story about when I was in high school and college. I was working as a radio announcer, DJ, and there was this lady on Saturday morning, a Pentecostal evangelist lady that had this radio program called, I kid you not, the Scriptural Sunshine Hour, on which she talked about Jesus and played and sang on an auto harp. And most of you don't even know what an auto harp is, and that's okay. May God protect you. Can I tell you that I hated this lady? Because she made it her mission to get me born again. I hated her. You know what happened to me? Once I understood what it was to have faith in Jesus, and I knew that I had entered into a new life, I drove straight to her house. She and her husband lived in a little farmhouse outside the little city where I was born. And I told her what had happened to me. And she became like a spiritual mother to me. And I loved her. She was as goofy and cheesy as she had ever been. But I loved her, because I had been born of God. And because of that, I love those who have been born of God. That makes sense? That's what happened to me. And so that is what's going on. So I can know that. I've got a family. I'm a part of God's family. There's a second reason here. because we are accepted by God, not our performance. Now let me read this passage. It's a little hard, but stay with me, okay? We're going to start in verse 2. By this we know that we love the children of God when we love God and obey His commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not burdensome. We're not doing this by force or fear that if we don't keep His commandment, He's going to zap us for some celestial lightning bolt or something like that. For everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world, and this is our victory, that we overcome the world, our faith. Not our works, not our performance. It's our faith in what Jesus already did, and that's why He has already accepted us. And churches are filled with people working hard so that God might accept them, so that God might show favor on them. And John is just saying, no, that's not what happens when you know that you belong. Trying to blend in by doing is not the same thing as knowing that we belong. And I believe there's people in this church just working hard to blend in. And that's not the same as knowing that you belong. Knowing. And then there's a third reason. It's because we believe that Jesus is the Son of God. For those of you from a Jewish or Islamic background, please understand, we're not saying that God had sex with Mary and Jesus was born. That's not what the phrase Son of God means. And it's because we as believers have often done such a poor job of explaining what it means that Jesus Christ is the unique Son of God. It means that He is rather the very essence of God. God has conferred on Him the essence of who God is. And so John then lists for us the historical reasons why we can know that. Now this passage is a little hard. Again, stick with me and put this in context. John says in verse 6, this is He who came by water and blood, Jesus Christ, not by water only, but by water and the blood. And the Spirit is the one who testifies, because the Spirit is the truth. For there are three that testify, the Spirit and the water and the blood, and these three agree. If we receive the testimony of men, the testimony of God's greater, for this is the testimony of God that He's born concerning His Son. Whosoever believes in the Son of God has that testimony in himself. Whosoever does not believe that God has made him a liar, because he has not believed in the testimony that God has borne concerning His Son. And this is the testimony that God gave us, eternal life, and this life is in His Son. Whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have the Son of God does not have life. Now before you get all caught up, well, what's the symbolism of the water? What's the symbolism? No, John is not talking about symbolism here. John is talking as the dude who was there when it happened. He's not writing as a theologian to theologians trying to figure out symbolism. John is writing as the only remaining eyewitness of Jesus. And he's saying, look at this passage again, look in verse 6. This is He who came by water and blood. John is saying, I was there the day that Jesus came up out of the water, baptized by John the Baptist. I was there the day that the blood ran down the cross where He died for our sin. I was there when God's Spirit spoke from heaven and said, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. I saw it. I was there. You can know it. It's real. You don't need a theologian to interpret that. You just need a historic voice who was there, an eyewitness to say, I can tell you it's true because I was there, I saw it, I heard it. That's what he's saying. He's dealing with fact, not feeling. 2 weeks ago today, I'm sitting right there. We're always set. Raise your hand, Cheryl, my sweet little wife right there. That empty chair, that's mine, okay? I'm sitting right there listening to Pastor Tim. My wrist vibrates. I'd forgotten to put my phone on airplane mode or whatever. And I turn and I look at my watch and I see something that leaves me in shock and confusion. Let me have you take a look, and I'll show you what I saw on my watch. That's what I saw on my watch. And I'm absolutely confounded. And I'll tell you why. That is my boyhood home. And I'm like, what? What? And as soon as the service was over, I'm like, I've got to figure this out. I found out that a guy that I went to high school with, I've not talked to for years. He's one of just a handful of people I went to high school with. I've even know where in the world they are, had any contact with. And he Facebook messaged me and said, this came up and was posted on Facebook. I thought you would be interested. That's your house, right? What? So I got to figure this out. So I get on my computer, I go to Facebook, and I find out that someone has posted this picture of my house on a private group on Facebook, Memories of the Little City Where I Grew Up. And I'm like, So it's a private group, so I've got to get in. And so I'm trying to figure this out. And, I'm scrolling through that, trying to join this group. And do you promise and swear to God that you will not post pornography, that you will not talk about religion or politics? Who do you know in this group? And I'm like, many, many people. All right, then wait for the administrator who will give you permission to join. So about 30 minutes later, I get permission. I get in there. And here's what it's about. The guy who was the senior planner for the little city in southern Kansas where I was born bought the house, our family home. And he says, can anybody help me understand the history of this house? And by the time I got from here home, there were over 80 comments, not likes, more than 80 comments. And I'm looking through these comments, people that I went to high school with, people that are saying, well, that was the house of Jeff Adams in the 60s. And I think it belonged to this person or that person. Well, I think it was built in 18, whatever it was, or whatever that. And I'm like, no. Let me get in here. And so what I did is I posted a picture of my own. That's the house as it looked when it was built in the late 1880s. My great-great-grandparents had immigrated from Scotland, somehow made their way to a little town in southern Kansas, built this as the family home. And my family lived there. In fact, if you can see that room right there on the corner that is closest above the front porch there, that was my room. That was the room where my father was born. That's the room where my grandmother was born in 1899. And so I posted this long post explaining the history. And something began to happen. You see, when I drove away from my little city to go to Wichita State and put that town in my rearview mirror, I've been on 6 continents and 80 countries. You know the one place I never went with the exception of one day? I never went back to the city where I was born because I was convinced I didn't belong. And so all this began to work in me. And I'm interacting with people that I haven't seen since high school. And for the first time in all of these decades, since driving away one fall day, I felt connected. I felt connected to the little city where I was born. Same population today as it had back then, maybe a few less. The interstate missed it. And then the real breakthrough. I realized, and some of you right here, you're fighting this yourself and you don't even know it, just like I didn't know it for decades. You're fighting a feeling, not a fact. Emotions are neither negative nor positive. They're just emotions. They speak to us, and our job is to say, what's happening here? What emotion is that? Why do I have it? What needs to be done? I was fighting the feeling of not belonging. Now, I'm embarrassed to tell you this next part because it's so stupid. When I was a junior in high school, these people elected me as president of the junior class. The next year, they elected me as student council president. Those are the facts. That doesn't sound like something that people do to somebody who doesn't belong. See what I'm talking about? See how powerful those feelings can be? And when you get going so fast and you don't realize, what am I feeling here and why am I feeling this? And you don't deal with the facts. As Pastor Tim said a few weeks ago, it's time to begin doubting your doubts and fact-checking your facts. And that's exactly what began to happen to me. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. I learned that popularity and hanging out is not belonging, just like blending in is not belonging. Those are just things that happen. Wow. So, very quickly, two great, awesome benefits that come from knowing that we belong. Number one, it gives us confidence in prayer. So jump onto the other side of verse 13 to verse 14. And this is the confidence that we have toward Him, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And if we know that He hears us in whatsoever we ask of Him, we know that we have the request that we've asked of Him. If anyone sees his brother committing a sin not leading to death, he shall ask, and God will give him life to those who commit sins that do not lead to death. There is a sin that leads to death. I do not say that one should pray for that. All wrongdoing is sin, but there is a sin that does not lead to death. We know that everyone who was born of God does not keep on sinning, but he who was born of God protects him, and the evil one does not touch him. Do not ask me, either now or after this service, what's the sin unto death? Because that's not the point. That's not the point. If it was the point, you would see it in bold print, underscored all the way through the Bible. Again, John is being very wise and subtle. And what he's talking about there, those same false teachers that Pastor Tim didn't deal with in chapter 4 for the very same reason. What John is saying here, look, if somebody is not loving God and loving others who've been born of God, don't listen to them. They're not the real deal. You understand what I'm saying? And so what he's saying there is, look, we all have sin. We all have struggles, okay? We ought to pray for each other, and we have confidence when we pray for each other. But some people who have been exposed to the truth have deliberately, intentionally rejected the truth and hardened their hearts. Let God deal with them. That's what that's about. It's not some code word. It's not some like, oh, the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. Oh, no. It's not what it's about at all. So confidence in prayer as we pray His will, outward pointing prayers for what God is doing to take His gospel to people who are not reached all over this globe, praying for those in this city who need to be reached, praying for those in this city, in your neighborhood, in your family that have these needs, outward prayers according to His will, praying for others, loving relational prayers, not judging but praying. And then the second benefit is confidence in our relationship to God. Verse 19. We know that we are from God, and the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. And we know that the Son of God has come and given us understanding so that we may know Him who is true, and we are in Him who is true, in His Son Jesus Christ. He is the true God and eternal life. Little children, keep yourselves from idols. Do you hear what he's saying here? Don't let anything come between you and God. Because you can have confidence in your relationship with Him. Because He has accepted you, not on the basis of your performance, not on the basis of what you have done or will do. He has accepted you because of what Jesus did in His death, His burial, and His resurrection. So you can have confidence, and don't let anything come between you and God. You feeling a little distant from God? Is it a feeling or is it a fact? If it's a fact, you can do something about it today and put your faith in Jesus Christ. If it's a feeling, ask yourself, what lie am I believing? if you feel distant from God, if you're wrestling with the feeling, what is the lie that you're believing instead of trusting in the facts? That's what this is about. And you see, that works with any feeling, not just my struggle of feeling like I belong. I'm so glad for this family. I'm so glad for Graceway. I'm so glad for a relationship that goes back half a century with this church, because I do have a place that I belong, and it's real, and you do too. God, would you, in your grace and mercy, just get inside our minds and our hearts like you've done in mine these past couple of weeks. God, just root around inside all of our feelings and all of our muddled thoughts and lead us to doubt our doubts and fact check our facts, that we might have that power and confidence that comes from knowing that we belong. Lord, we love you. Thank you for what you have done to us and for us through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Savior, our Messiah. Amen.
Well, stand up on your feet. Let's sing together, y'all. Praying God come and turn this thing around. God turn it around. God turn it around. I turn it around. I'm calling on that name. It changes everything. God turn it around. I turn it around. I turn it around. 'Cause all of my hope is in the name of Jesus. Breakthrough will come in the name of Jesus. Come on, let's sing. I'm praying God come and turn this thing around. Oh, God turn it around. God turn it around. God turn it around. Yeah. I'm calling on the name. It changes everything. Yeah. God turn it around. God turn it around. God turn it around. 'Cause all of my hope is in the name of Jesus. Breakthrough will come in the name of Jesus. God turn it around, yeah. God turn it around. 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 He is up to something. He is up to something. God is doing something right now. He is up to something. He is up to something. God is doing something right now. He is healing someone. He is saving someone. God is doing something right now. Right now. He is healing someone. He is saving someone. God is doing something right now. We'll sing. He is moving mountains, making a way for someone. God is doing something right now. He is moving mountains, making a way for someone. God is doing something right now. Hey, He is moving turn it around. God, 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 turn it around. Yeah. Come on, give him praise in this place. Hallelujah. Amen. Man, are you glad you came to church this morning, y'all? That's what I'm talking about. Listen, if you want to pray with a pastor, man, we have pastors and leaders down front who would love to pray for you. Don't let this moment pass without connecting and talking to a pastor. If you want to give, you can give on the way out the doors. We have Growth Track Step 1, Know and Enjoy God, man. That's happening today. Man, we love you. Thank you so much for coming today. We'll see y'all next week.
Hey, thanks again for being a part of this incredible experience today. We were so glad you were here. We believe that God wants you to discover your purpose so that you can make a difference. So follow the link on the screen to join us for Growth Track. If you want to know what else is going on around Graceway, head over to visitgraceway.org/events. If you heard something today that you want to know more about, have a need, or want to pray with someone, call or text us at 816-423-2877, and one of our pastors will connect with you. Graceway goes live every weekend, so be sure to click the like and subscribe button so you know when we add new content. Have an incredible week, and we'll see you next time.